Welcome to Locked On Golden Knights. Adin Hill added to the VGK goaltending room.
Your Locked On Golden Knights, your daily podcast on the Vegas Golden Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hi again, everyone. I'm Tony Cardasco along with Chris Golick. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Locked On VGK. Also follow us on Twitter at Locked On Golden Knights, at Locked On VGK. I'm Tony Cardasco again at Tony Dasco. Chris Golick is at TD Chris G on Twitter. And a lot to talk about as usual on today's show. So since we left you, and since I gave VGK a better grade than Chris Golick, VGK signing Adin Hill, the goaltender from San Jose, and they do it in exchange for a fourth-round pick and 74 NHL games between Arizona, Chris, and San Jose, 2.74 goals against average. He played in 25 games last season before sustaining that second half injury, a lower body injury. And does this acquisition, first thing that comes to mind, does this acquisition mean that Laurent Brossoit will not be ready for opening day?
So, and oddly enough, after Hill's injury, his only game he played after, he shut out the LA Kings. So he ended his Sharks career on a high note, I guess. What does this mean about Brossoit and possibly being injured? I think there's a lot of things that this signing means, and that's the first thing that does come to my mind is the fact that possibly Brossoit is not going to be ready either for camp and or the start of the season to be one of the goalies in the rotation. Notice I didn't say the backup goalie there. We're going to talk about that somewhere in a second here. But I think Brossoit is not going to be ready immediately. And the second thing I think that this does mean is VGK is concerned about the depth at the position overall. Let's talk about some numbers here. Hill, 74 career NHL games played. Logan Thompson, 20 career NHL games played. Brossoit, 106 career NHL games played. Hill had the most starts in a single season of those goalies with 25, Brossoit 24, Logan Thompson 19. So if you add that up, folks, all three of our starting goalies do not have enough games combined started in a single season to have even had a full season. So each of our three goalies would have to average more than they've ever played in their entire career in a single season. So I think there's some concern as far as the depth of the position goes. And we talked about this, Tony, right? We said if LT got 60, 65 starts, that could bode well for the Vegas Golden Knights. If he's doing well and he gets 65 starts, then sure, he's a quality starting goaltender. But if he is starting that amount of games in necessity in his first really full season as a professional NHLer, that could be trouble.
And, the thing that happened, Kelly McCrimmon saying things change very quickly and rapidly.
Very quickly.
I mean, they had three goalies there that could start in San Jose. They acquired at the trade deadline Kaapo Kaukonen. They also have James Reimer, who I think is pretty good. And part of me wanted Reimer over Adin Hill, just to be quite frank. And he said that they feel as though they have more comfort, Chris, now at the goaltending position. And I don't know how many times Kelly McCrimmon kept repeating himself and saying that they need an NHL goalie. So that was something that I found a little bit interesting. We knew that they needed goaltender depth, of course. I don't believe in Laurent Brossoit. I do believe in Logan Thompson. Again, very small sample size. You have goaltenders that now have to prove themselves between the pipes for the Golden Knights.
So earlier I said about not having a starting goalie. I honestly think that there is not a clear defined starting goalie for the Vegas Golden Knights right now. And which this is new for us, folks, right? The Vegas Golden Knights have either had a clear-cut starting goalie or two clear-cut starting goalies that y'all wanted to argue and fight about, obviously being Leonard and Fleury, of course.
And one of those guys got stinking impaled too. So,
so right now there's going to be a battle in camp. There's going to be a battle to be the opening night starter. There's going to be a battle to who gets the most games. And I think that could be something fun we should throw up on the old Twitter about who is going to start the most games in the net for the VGK. And honestly, it's not clear cut that it's going to be Logan Thompson, folks. It's not clear cut. I think if I'm going to handicap it, I certainly think that's how it's going to play out. But again, Logan Thompson is the rookie. He's the youngster. He only has 20 NHL starts. Now, no one else has greater than 106 of that group, being Brossoit, and then 74 for Adin Hill. So it's not exactly a tall task for LT to rise above those other players. But I think there is going to be a competition for the starting position. In addition, I don't know if the quote unquote starter is going to get greater than 42 to 45 starts this season now that we have this three-headed monster. Now, the concern that I do have, folks, is what happens when they're all three of them are healthy. Logan Thompson is the only one of those players that's on a two-way contract that you can send down to the AHL. So VGK, and I've alluded to this a couple different times over the last 2 or 3 shows, if VGK acquires another somewhat, and granted, Adin Hill is not a Varlamov or a Jake Allen, or just throwing out some more seasoned veterans, so to speak. But still, there is a reasonable chance our best goaltender might be platooning all season between Henderson and VGK, where again, VGK plays on Sunday. Their next game is on Wednesday. VGK sends Logan Thompson down to the AHL, and then and then comes back up on Wednesday. This is going to be interesting, but I'm not against having more depth at the position either. I don't mind this signing. I just don't know if Adin Hill is the one that's going to give us that comfort that we were lacking at the position either.
and he could use some seasoning. Again, he's just 25 years old. He's 6'6". I never realized how big and tall he was because he moves around very well in net. I thought, I've seen him make some spectacular saves over the past few years here in both Arizona and with San Jose. 6'6", very athletic, and he stands deep in the net. And they feel
you're flirting with danger. You're playing with fire here, mentioning like a big goalie that stays deep in the net. And stuff like that.
But Sean Burke, I think, must have seen something that they feel that they could work on, develop, what have you. And VGK's done well with these type of players. I mean, across the board in the past, where they revive careers or jumpstart a career, and the Chandler Stevenson we talked about, and a lot of other players where they've done very well, that they've had some steals, I think, for what they paid. Now, Chris, 2.175 against the cap leaves about 1.8 for Nick Hague. What are they going to do with Nick Hague? Sign a trade? You still stuck on that?
I think there's ways to. I mean, you look at the VGK roster right now. There's enough forwards where there could be something where, with all the LTIR relief, Nolan Patrick. I think there's something going on with Nolan Patrick. I don't know if we're necessarily factoring his $2 million and change roughly. I'll look that up just to spot check it in a second. But I think if you take Nolan Patrick off the books, which I think is looking the likely scenario for the first 15 to 20 games of the season, plus or minus, then yeah, I think you're certainly in that safe comfort zone to get Nick Hague wrapped up somewhere in the the 2.75-3 million range. We pointed out Zach Whitecloud's contract, I believe, the other day, and there's no way, at least I think, Nick Hague should make more than Zach Whitecloud. Maybe Nick Hague and his agent think otherwise, of course. Maybe inflation is playing into that now, and VGK's newfound spending habits. But I certainly think that the number for Hague is like 2.5 to 2.7. Maybe a couple bucks more or less, depending on the term. I don't want a 1-year deal for Hague. I don't want to go through this again, because if Hague does have a breakout campaign where he gets 65, 70 games, he just is that big force on the backside, so to speak. He's going to want even more money next season. So I would love a 3 to 4 million or 3 to 4 year deal for Hague, somewhere in the 2.5 to 2.7 range. If they go to 3 million, fine, whatever. But 2.5, 2.7 really feels like the right number for 3, even to 5 years if he's willing to take on that type of term.
I still have the feeling that VGK, if they had their druthers, they would much rather get rid of Laurent Brossoit. I really do. I don't think that they are high on him. And now I feel as though there's more to his injury or injuries than they anticipated. But they did know that they needed some goalie depth. But I thought that they would get a more seasoned goaltender. So that's why I was surprised about this. And I know that we heard Kelly McCrimmon say that they have a goaltender that they hold in high regard, and a lot of starts versus top 10 teams where he fared very well. Backed up Darcy Kemper in Arizona, and he got some starts there. He has made some spectacular plays. For a big guy at 6'6", he moves a lot better than another tall but beefy goaltender.
So a couple things. One, Nolan Patrick's actually 1.2 million before our YouTube friends on YouTube who keep those comments coming, good, bad, or otherwise. But
love them.
Before someone comes after me there for saying 2 million, Nolan Patrick's 1.2. You said we got about 1.8, so that's $3 million in change right there, plus or minus. That's the number for Nick Hague, folks. That's the number. I mean, obviously, if we can keep it around 2.5, that's fine, but that's going to be the number. And I'm guessing we get something worked out in the next 7 days. I don't think they're going to want to drag this too much longer, because really every day that goes by, maybe it's in Nick Hague's, favor every day. I don't know. So back to what you're saying about Hill and, what he might be, and maybe there's something they saw. I like that. I do like that perspective. I like the fact that you look back at signings like this that seem a little not exciting. I mean, when VGK acquired Chandler Stevenson, who thought anything of it? Like, okay, cool, Chandler Stevenson, yeah, he played on Washington, he had a few goals here and there, and whatever. You go back to William Karlsson, he had 6 goals, and look what happened to him. Nick Waugh was certainly another wonderful acquisition on the cheap, and obviously we're starting to see the dividends he pays, or even Shea Theodore when the deal was made to acquire Shea Theodore back in the day, so to speak. So maybe there is something with Hill that VGK, Sean Burke, the rest of our scouts, maybe there's something that they see in him. I mean, this reminds me of what Devin Dubnyk, right? About that type of goalie as far as size goes, and can he move around quick enough? Can he recover faster than Robin Lehner? I think that's going to be the immediate comparison, and I think just because, and this is upsetting, unfortunately, maybe I'm profiling some of the VGK fan base a little bit here, so I'll probably take some heat. But since he is a tall, beefy goalie who might not be as quick as Logan Thompson or someone that plays in a traditional butterfly position, doesn't recover fast enough, just maybe he might, if he has a bad game, and he might get they might ride him pretty hard. And I certainly hope that doesn't happen just based on his appearance. I certainly hold higher regard for the VGK fan base, but any trip into any Facebook forum, shows that the VGK fan base is still in a very sensitive position right now.
I think while VGK has done some things to bolster, its top 6, and now, with Kessel's addition, the top 9, right? Goaltender is still such a major concern with this team. I'm really concerned about there's so many question marks, and I really do. And no knock against Laurent Brossoit, but I don't know if he's going to see the ice. If he does, see the ice this season, maybe after the first of the year, they're going to have to play salary cap shenanigans again to get him out on the ice. This is just my opinion. And those two, it's good to have the competition. Don't take that for granted at all. But I'm very concerned headed into this season about, the question mark. Of course, Logan Thompson, can he play more games? Can he continue his run? And I believe he can. Don't know about Adin Hill, hit and miss. And then, Laurent Brossoit, just no telling. So many question marks for the goaltending position heading into the season, where things should be solidified by now.
We were very low on VGK's offseason grade for addressing the goaltender position. Prior to the Hill signing, we had 120 26 games of NHL goaltending experience as far as our top 2 goaltenders wins. I guess I didn't count Hutchinson in that mix, but whatever.
Your
that.
favorite.
Yeah, my
I didn't even
favorites.
mention him.
Yeah,
It
I
took
mean,
us
that's the thing.
about
Like,
18 minutes into the show.
yeah, and that's interesting. 18 minutes. Geez, we're losing time already. So now we have increased our goaltending depth by almost a third, right? So, I mean, I guess you have to give some credit that we have at least added some experience to the position. Is this the comforting experience that I want to see? And, now I honestly want to figure out, why did VGK sign Hutchinson? Like, that was, I think, my first tweet trying to connect the dots on Locked On Vegas Golden Knights. But why did
How much
the
are they paying
VGK?
him? How much are they paying Hutchinson?
He's got he's on a two-way deal.
Two-way
So
deal.
I don't think it's relevant unless he's in the NHL, but
But
it's
it's
got to be
still,
the
but
league
it's
minimum, I would
right.
assume.
It's about 750,
Yeah,
750,
767, I think, but whatever.
760.
But
Okay, whatever that is. But yeah, like, it's still eating up some cash though against the cap.
why did they make the signing? You still have Patera, you still have Seville or Seville, forget. I think it's Seville, like the Chipmunk Seville, because someone called me out for that. So that's 2, pretty solid goaltender. I think Ferguson is doing some PTOs. Last I heard, he was up in Toronto trying to catch on with that organization. But he could still, wind up coming back to the VGK if he has not signed yet. And then, so there's all these kind of goalies floating around. I mean, maybe this is, maybe they got that bucket of stuff and they're going to smear it on the wall and they're going to see what sticks. And I'm not saying our goalies are a bucket of stuff, folks. Don't do that. Don't. But I think this is just, hey, we're going to throw, we got Logan Thompson. We kind of know what we have with Logan Thompson, what he could be. Brossoit is someone that VGK liked as a backup to Robin Leonard. Remember, Robin Leonard was expected, 60 plus starts. Brossoit right around that 20, which is a good spot for him. Obviously, things are changing now. So now you add another goalie to the mix and you just kind of see what happens. I mean, sometimes things have a way of working themselves out. You might have the hot hand. All 3 of these goalies might also push each other a little bit. Logan Thompson might have felt comfortable he was going to be the starter out of camp day 1 with little to no competition from Hutchinson, Patera. Like, that's not competition to Logan Thompson. Brossoit maybe a little bit, but Brossoit is the defined backup. Okay, now Leonard's gone. LT is here. LB is here at some point, and now we sign a goalie who has 3 times or greater the experience than Logan Thompson has. So this is only going to help Logan Thompson, I think. Hopefully the VGK locker room culture amongst these 3 goalies is positive and they push each other, and maybe it all will be just fine. I mean, I guess I'll go from an F, which is where I did grade their goaltending offseason report card. I gave them an F for that, which is more than fair. I think now we can maybe go to a C- or a D+. I mean, they improved by a third as far as experience goes. It's got to be worth something, right?
Yeah, and the thing that impressed me the most is that it just took 2 Kelly McCrimmon rotary telephone calls to complete this deal.
Tony poking the bear this morning.
Coming up next, Jack Eichel says that he's hoping to be a dynamic force, Chris, this upcoming season, still recovering from that neck injury. We'll return with more. We'll talk about Jack Eichel after this. BetOnline.net is the fastest. It's the easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL. We'll talk about point totals for this upcoming season in our third segment today: combat sports, esports, even golf, much, much more. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting scores, podcasts. They have you all covered, everything across the board. Head to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the action that is happening throughout the course of today in sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back to Locked On Golden Knights. Tony Cardasco, Chris Golick in Las Vegas. Thanks for making us your #1 choice for your podcast each and every day. You could find us wherever you find your podcast, and make sure that you subscribe to our brand spanking new YouTube channel. It's on fire, as they say, and that is Locked On VGK. You could also find us at Locked On VGK on Twitter. So, Chris, Jack Eichel does an interview, He spoke to Jackie Spiegel of NHL.com, and Eichel said that it's been a normal summer, first time in 3 years for him coming back from that ADR surgery, 25 points in 14 games. I think he's being a little bit too hard on himself. He had the fractured thumb for the final 6 weeks. He sustained in that Florida game. He said no excuses, said he didn't play well. And in terms of his expectations of himself, he just didn't, he felt as though he let the fans down. And I'm sure that the public opinion, he said, is out there. And he goes, I just couldn't believe that he said that he felt that people expected a lot more out of him this past season. Are you kidding me? I thought he was phenomenal in terms of coming back from the ADR surgery, in terms of handling the puck, stick handling, and in terms of scoring, and in terms of playing through that broken thumb injury. I thought he did a great job. I don't think he didn't let anyone down in my book.
I mean, so as far as the stat goes, down the stretch, Eichel was 1 goal and 2 assists when it mattered most. So I think that is probably what is sticking out in Eichel's head. Are the fans necessarily, crapping on him for that? I keep referencing that today. I got to stop doing that. But are the fans necessarily holding that against him? I mean, sure, some, I guess that was a notable thing, but more or less from the Buffalo side and the hockey media outside of Vegas was being a little harder on him. But yeah, you look at everything he's been through, from the surgery, from basically being gone, an entire season, from coming out of that dumpster fire situation in Buffalo to coming to Vegas. And I think he started well. He was on the trajectory, if you will, to get back to being that, in his words, dynamic force. But, it's funny you said that, Tony, because before, and this is my notes for today, half of it is from my work I was doing last night, but on the bottom, I circled dynamic force when I read the article, and I wanted to bring that up. And you said that in the teaser. I thought that interesting, but who calls themselves a dynamic force? I don't know. That's kind of strange. That's strange. But to be fair, Eichel is a dynamic force. He was a dynamic force before he came to Vegas. He was nearly a point per game player. I think the percentage was 0.95 or 0.96. So 96% of the games he's played in his career, he's logged at least 1 point. That is a dynamic force, no doubt about that. I mean, you can argue a player like that, if they do connect the dots with some deep playoff runs and a couple of trophies, if you will, that's Hall of Fame type numbers. There's players with much worse stats, but have the accolades that have gotten in the Hall of Fame. So, that's what Eichel could aspire to be. Did I call Jack Eichel a Hall of Famer? Let's slow down, folks. I did not say that. Could his numbers possibly get him there one day? Absolutely. So he's being tough on himself. And Eichel, we know he's going to give a pretty honest take on things. He's said much more controversial things in his time as Buffalo, in his time in Buffalo, when things weren't going the right way. And he did, I believe, allude to himself as possibly having better stats than McDavid one day. When he was drafted, obviously, McDavid was drafted ahead of him. So, this is Eichel being Eichel right now and just kind of chirping a little bit, but he's also being honest about how he feels last season went. And yeah, I think he's being a little hard on himself, especially given what he's been through. And he never mentioned the broken thumb. Like, again, folks, go about your daily routine with a broken thumb. I make a living opening packs of sports cards. I have to pinch my thumbs in there and rip the pack back. If one of these thumbs stops working, and this one actually is kind of hurt. I got in a fight a long time ago in a hockey game, and it's still kind of screwed up, but that's another story for another time. But if one of your thumbs are broken, how do you go about your daily business? Now, if your daily business is shooting 100-mile-an-hour slap shots and sniping wrist shots and making quality passes, come on, folks.
Yeah, and I can't talk. I can't do the podcast because I'm Italian. I can't speak without my hands. So the broken thumb would be hampering my game. He talked about a lot of different types of poor compensations, right? He had that neck injury, but to kind of make up for that neck injury, maybe he used the support of his back a little bit more. And then he said he also had, different things, different patterns that more or less popped up. And so we could see that, again, that's just miraculous to me. The fact that he had the surgery that no other player in the history of the NHL had performed, right? He gets that done. And then he comes back, I think, in quick order. He recovers. And then, I mean, after he has that neck surgery, he's on the ice, right? We see the videos of him working out.
Days after, like less than a
Yeah.
week, I thought.
Yeah. And to me, I'm just so impressed that he even made it back, in short order, that he was a part of this team. He was a major part of this team. And folks, don't kid yourselves. They wouldn't even have been in playoff contention without him. They wouldn't have been.
No, that's very, very, very fair. 100,000% that Eichel certainly helped the process down the stretch. And
the process.
The process, exactly. So you mentioned the comment Eichel made about relying on his back a little bit to do his maneuverabilities and things like that. Folks, again, I skate, I ref hockey, but I'm not a great skater by any means. I'm not anywhere near these guys out there. But what I can tell you is, if one of my skates is a little looser than normal, I'm out there skating differently. If my back is hurting a little bit, I'm out there skating a little bit differently. And I don't have to do much to keep up with the beer leaguers. It doesn't take a whole lot, because that's where I am as far as my ability. If I were to put a stick in my hands and join the game as well, I'm not very good at all. But what I can tell you is, now you're magnifying all these things times 10,000, which is what it takes to be at the level that Jack Eichel and the other NHLers are at. And when you have to change little things like, using your back a little bit more. I mean, they tell you don't lift with your back, right, Tony? Don't lift with your back, little things like that. And then now you're changing all of this stuff, trying to keep up with these NHLers who, are getting stronger and faster. And, the science of the game is just, a whole nother world right now. So, yeah, I mean, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what a normal, healthy, cocky, and I mean that in a good way, but cocky Jack Eichel is going to do. And he called himself the dynamic force. That's his words right there. Maybe I'll get his number and put dynamic force on the back of it one of these days. Maybe that'll be a fun way. I got a couple jerseys back there. Maybe I'll put a tape nameplate over it with dynamic force and Eichel's number below it or something.
But you are a dynamic force, Chris, as everyone knows. And Bruce Cassidy, has talked an awful lot. I think he's in the head of Jack Eichel. He's played a lot of head games, I think, over the summer. It's just interesting that he said that he doesn't believe that Eichel should carry the entire load every night. He doesn't think that he has to be driving things every night, which I find pretty interesting, because he is the main driver. He's the top line center, and he's going to be instrumental on the power play. So he is going to have to drive. Says he wants him to play about 18 and a half to 19 minutes. He says, hey, if he wins faceoffs and does a lot of the dirty things and whatever and helps the team win, then that is a success. But he also believes that this could be, Chris, a springboard for Jack Eichel in his career. And I think he's going to take a major step forward. I just believe that he's going to be a dynamic force here in Vegas this season. I do.
He could score 74 points. It could be his best season of his career. He doesn't need to carry the entire weight of the team. Are there times we want him to? No doubt. Is there going to be a time when it feels like we're just being smothered the entire game, can't get anything going? We're down 2-0, with 8 minutes left in the third, and then you give the puck to Eichel, see what he can do. I think that's the dynamic force we need out of him, if you will, to be that difference maker, to be that player who can take over a game in a single shift. But he has a lot more players to rely on. Even with Max Pacioretty gone, there are so many more players around him, and now the top 8 or top 9, if you will, versus just really having, 1 or 2 solid line mates. And then, I mean, VGK is going to be a tough team to defend, folks. They're going to be a tough team to defend when you factor 3 powerful lines and potentially a pretty solid energy checking line, if you will. So that's going to help Eichel a whole lot, folks.
Yeah, it really will. And also, I know we're up against the clock here, but that NHL.com story, Chris, also hinted that Mark Stone might be missing the preseason camp. And then Kelly McCrimmon cleared the air and blamed it on all of the media for one reporter making that statement. And then he said that he's not sure about, again, the return of Stone. He feels as though he'll be back for the camp, working out, optimistic that he'll be back. And again, the reporter had to retract the statement about Stone missing camp. I found that kind of interesting.
And
too.
Gary Lawless immediately jumped in on that too, and basically kind of chalked it up as like a miscommunication or something like that. And you know what I mean? If Stone misses camp, who cares? I mean, if he's ready by game 1 or game 3 or game 4 and logs 70 plus games, given what's happened, great, no issues at all. But I it's good. There's always something to talk about, Tony. I mean, this is we have not had to stretch a whole lot this offseason.
No, I don't think we've had to stretch at all. Coming up next, we've got betonline.net. They sent us the point totals for VGK and the rest of the NHL, and we'll get into that. We'll discuss that next. You are listening and watching Locked On Golden Knights. Welcome back to Locked On Golden Knights. Tony Cardasco, Chris Golick here in Las Vegas. And Chris, Colorado, Toronto, Florida, Carolina, and Tampa Bay, the highest projected point totals heading into the season, according to betonline.net. And then the lowest, you have Arizona, you have Chicago, Montreal, San Jose, Buffalo, lowest projected point totals, according to betonline.net. And VGK's total, this has to be, well, in a full season, the first time, is this the first time that they're projected over under total points is under 100? Because they come in at 97.5 points, which I think is obtainable this upcoming campaign.
So a few things. Obviously season 1, they were, their season total was probably somewhere around 62 points by the way everyone was talking. And after that, I'm sure the over-unders for the season totals were certainly greater, or at least on a percentage basis with the shortened season 2 seasons ago. The interesting thing, you said 97.5 points, I believe, was the number, Tony. So I'm looking at last year's standings. BetOnline is saying VGK is a fringe playoff team using last year's standings. Dallas 98 points, 7 seed. Nashville 97 points, 8 seed. 97.5 points. So that's BetOnline's outlook on the VGK. Is 100 and 203 points out of the realm for VGK, and to make that top 3 in the Pacific. Goaltending withstanding, I think this is probably a safe over you can possibly bet if you don't mind having your money locked up for a long futures type of situation. But the goaltending, folks, that's just such a strange situation right now. And I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, I'm the VGK happy go lucky, everything's going to be great every single season. But, looking at this is the first time I've really had more concern about the goaltending position. And it's a result of signing Hill. I'm not knocking Hill by any means, but, 200 career games played amongst our 3 primary goaltenders. That's a concern, folks. That is a concern. I hope it all works out well. I think the path to success is 45 starts Logan Thompson, and then LB and Hill round out those other games. And I think if they can all support each other and keep Logan Thompson fresh, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. But if Logan Thompson has some growing pains, which is fair for the youngster and anyone just coming up in the NHL, can Brossoit and Hill carry the mail?
Interesting. Yeah. And last year, the total on VGK was 106.5.
Yes.
And they wound up with just 97 points. That'd be real interesting if they do wind up at 97 with the total 97 and the hook. I know you like that hook in there.
Gotta be a winner or a loser. No pushes in the Golick house.
How about this? Colorado's over under 111.5. And last year they scored 111. Are they going to replicate that? I don't know. Especially teams coming off of a Stanley Cup championship. A little bit of a letdown. It's hard to repeat. Everyone's gunning for them, all of that. They had an amazing stretch at home. I don't know if they can replicate the season they had. I'm going to take the under there.
It's hard to repeat, although the Lightning just did it, and they possibly could have three-peated if they would have showed up in the first round against Columbus the season before that in the bubble, or the season prior to the bubble, excuse me there. But yeah, I'm with you on that. In the NHL with the salary cap situation, I mean, they lost Kadri. That's a big deal right there. They lost Nazem Kadri, and unfortunately he comes to the Pacific now, so we have to deal with him a lot more, which is going to be wonderful. So yeah, I'm with you. If I'm going to make a bet on a long future and don't mind the money being tied up, then sure. The under on Colorado is not a bad place to be, definitely.
And then some of the other totals as I look around the Honda Pacific Division, the Ducks were 78.5. I found that interesting.
I like the over
Seattle,
there, just
what?
knee-jerk
Yeah,
reaction.
exactly. Seattle, they had 60 points a season ago, and suddenly they're at 83.5. And I know that, we've thought that they made some improvements, but are they going to be 24 points better than a season ago?
Just going back one quick point here. I'm going to ignore that for a second. I'm sorry, but going back to VGK, you said they were 104 points approximately last season for the over, and 103 was the number, I believe.
106.5.
106, and they got
97.
And they got 97.
Yeah.
It's just amazing the slim margins for 11 points when you look at all the man games that VGK lost. Like, I mean, when you look at that, folks, I think VGK actually had a pretty good season last year, given all the injuries. They only missed their projection by 11 points, and if they get those 100, if they get 4 more points, they're the 6th seed in the playoffs or something like that. So it's just remarkable how slim the margins are. We alluded to their playoff lack of success last year, but they just had 10 more playoff goals that will put them in the top 10. It's so crazy how razor thin these margins are in the NHL right now.
Yeah, Calgary is 101.5, had 111 points last season as well. Edmonton 102.5. Find a lot of this interesting, and we'll keep our eye on the latest developments there. And we thank everyone for making Locked On Golden Knights your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, 8 episodes, the extravaganza. You could find it with local team experts on Lock On Podcast Network and also on Odyssey. For my dynamic force and partner, Chris Golick, I'm Tony Cardasco. So long for now from Las Vegas. What the Friday coming up on Friday? Don't miss it right here on Locked On Golden Knights.